Davos and the memory of power, what Trump's Greenland moment reveals about America's changing role. The most revealing line at Davos this year was not delivered in anger or crisis. It came casually, almost offhand, the way power often speaks when it believes itself unchallenged. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember. Donald Trump's words, directed at Europe in the context of Greenland, were not just a negotiating tactic, they were a worldview laid bare. And for America's allies, they carried a message that will linger long after the Davos snow melts. This was not really about Greenland, it was about how power is exercised, how alliances are valued, and how memory works in international politics. So, Trump approaches leadership as a balance sheet exercise. It's all about figuring out who has leverage, who can impose costs, and who needs whom more. Once that calculation is made, pressure follows, openly, publicly, and unapologetically. You see, tariffs are not merely tools, they are demonstrations, and threats, well, they aren't just bargaining chips, they are proof of dominance. The goal isn't just to reach an agreement but to secure submission. Bruises in this context are treated as evidence that the method worked. This explains a lot about Trump's seemingly erratic behavior. He lashes out at allies over trade and shows irritation not only toward adversaries but also toward partners who resist a subordinate status. At the same time, he speaks carefully, sometimes even deferentially, to Dalken short do it vover baten sai, an se kuma faver jotten sonder bo as a down, Pruzosin sonder zai, nasen daken sai. Surless real retaliatory power. China, for instance, is handled with caution, and Gulf monarchies, they're admired for their wealth. Strength, in whatever form it takes, commands respect. Weakness invites pressure. Europe understands this pattern now. Even when tensions de-escalate, the lesson remains. The issue is not whether Trump will follow through on every threat, it is that the threat itself has become a governing principle. Several European leaders privately acknowledge that this crisis may cool, statements will be softened, meetings will resume, cooperation will continue. But trust does not return on command. Allies can work with a powerful partner they disagree with. What they cannot easily work with is one they cannot predict, and unpredictability, when paired with pride and coercion, changes behavior quietly, but permanently. Countries hedge, they diversify trade, they avoid overdependence, they plan for worst-case scenarios rather than best-case cooperation. None of this happens with dramatic announcements, it happens in budgets, contracts, long-term strategies, the invisible architecture of global politics. As one senior European leader put it, with striking clarity, we will remember. This moment matters because it marks a departure from how American power traditionally functioned. For nearly a century, the United States has been the dominant force in global affairs, but its leaders, at their best, understood that dominance alone was not enough. Power had to feel legitimate to last. Franklin D. Roosevelt understood this instinctively. Even when America was the indispensable arsenal of World War II, he did not summon allies like petitioners. Despite grave illness and physical limitation, he traveled to Casablanca, Tehran, and Yalta. The symbolism mattered, partnership mattered. George H.W. Bush understood it as well. When the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War ended, the United States could have celebrated loudly. Instead, Bush deliberately restrained himself. He refused to dance on the wall, not only to respect Eastern Europeans' moment, but to avoid humiliating a weakening Soviet leadership. He grasped a simple truth: how you win determines whether peace survives. This was not softness, it was strategic maturity. At Davos, amid the political noise, one striking contradiction stood out. Despite diplomatic turbulence, confidence in the American economy remains high. So, markets are strong, investment, continues, growth has not collapsed. Martin Wolf of the Financial Times captured this paradox well. The global economy today, well, it rests on decades of accumulated capital, knowledge, institutions, and technological innovation. That momentum does not disappear overnight. It carries forward even when politics becomes, erratic. But, momentum is not immunity. The real costs of eroding trust are, honestly, cumulative, not immediate. They show up as investments not made, partnerships quietly avoided, and risks deemed unnecessary. Trade thrives on predictability. When rules can change overnight, well, caution replaces ambition. We learned this lesson with Brexit. The damage was not a single shock, but a slow erosion that only became visible years later. The same dynamic applies here. Markets may absorb today's uncertainty, history will record tomorrow's consequences. Strategically, the irony is striking. The United States already secures its interests in Greenland through existing bases and cooperation. Expanded access could be achieved through negotiation, investment, and alliance, the very tools that built American influence after World War II. Annexation is unnecessary. Coercion is, counterproductive. Yet Trump's language transforms a manageable strategic issue into a test of dominance, and in doing so, he reshapes how allies perceive American leadership. This is the deeper legacy of the Davos moment. America's allies are not naive. They understand power. They will continue to work with Washington because the United States remains central to global stability. But something has shifted. They no longer assume restraint. They no longer assume goodwill. They no longer assume leadership means lifting others alongside. Instead, they plan for a world in which American power is real, but conditional, and where dignity must sometimes be defended against the very ally meant to protect it. Trump may or may not get his piece of ice, as he now calls Greenland. That outcome is secondary. What matters is the memory he has created, and in international politics, memory lasts far longer than headlines.